Guitar intervals, C major, A minor, and related modes. This time looking at the B Locrian mode, focusing in on centering around measuring from the B note located on the bottom of the guitar on the thin E string of the guitar, fret number 7. This is part number 3. One of our major objectives is to line up all of our resources in the same direction, making them as easy on the eyes as possible from the perspective of the player of the guitar, who is of course located behind the guitar. Therefore, for example, my guitar is going to look like I'm playing left-handed, but no, we just flipped it around in order to mirror your perspective from behind your guitar as though you were playing it into a mirror. Similarly, our Excel worksheet representing the fretboard is going to have this representing the low or heavy E string, the one on top of the guitar, top to bottom, left to right, situated as though we just took these strings and imprinted them on that screen. We're now focusing in on our intervals, looking at the Locrian mode around this B note, which is on fret number 7 on the high or thin E string at the bottom of the guitar. Before we do that, let's do a quick intro as to why you might want to go through these kind of exercises, practicing your intervals, focusing a little bit more time this time on the idea that we have the Locrian mode. Why in the world would we want to be learning the Locrian mode? One of the reasons that I'm trying to piece together and possibly put another kind of course or training session for my own purposes as well as possibly yours is to try to look at basically the shape and be able to name this shape multiple different ways, because my theory is that to actually learn something, we want to be able to see it from different perspectives. In other words, one definition of do you understand something, in my understanding, the way I see it, is that you can see it from basically multiple angles. If you can see something from only one angle, then you know it from one perspective, but you don't really know it unless you can see it from multiple different angles. And when you look at something that's really simple, but then you really break it down into multiple different perspectives, you'll realize that you don't know it anywhere nearly as well as you would think. Like even the alphabet A to G, even if we take out the sharps and flats, I bet most people will have problems if they start at any point in the alphabet and start to count it backwards or forwards, or to say, how could you go from A and then you're going to a D? How many steps are you taking when you go from this point to that point? So we can't really, if we really break it down, we only know it one way: A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and even then I have to sing the song. If I don't sing the song, it's all over. It's not happening, right? So what we want to, of course, be able to do is try to learn it from different angles. You see this happening in like a math class, for example, as well, where oftentimes what I tended to do a lot of times was to say, I know it from this perspective. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take all the problems, I'm going to convert it into this one perspective, which I know, and then I'm going to like solve it from that point. You can do that, but a lot of times that's a longer approach than if I was to be able to approach the problem from multiple different perspectives, as long as they follow the logical routine, which oftentimes they do. Similarly with the fretboard here, we've got the musical alphabet, but it's lined up on multiple different strings. So there's obviously basically an infinite amount of ways that you can kind of view basically the fretboard. It's going to be the general idea. So I want to get into thinking, okay, how can I label these notes in such a way that I can see them from each of the scales, major scale, minor scale, but also be able to play the other scales within it, even though I'm playing the same shape, the different modes, in other words. And I'd like to be able to then start and stop the scales from each point on the guitar, and I'd like to be able to define the intervals as from no matter what perspective I'm looking at. In other words, no matter what mode I'm looking at. And that becomes most clear because, say, if you're playing in the Locrian mode, then as I go to from the one of the Locrian to build a chord, which would be that diminished chord, if I was playing in Locrian, which a lot of people don't, but if you're playing in Locrian and then you go to another chord like the D chord, then you have to look at it, of course, from the perspective of the D here, right? So now I'm playing a D Dorian modal chord, if I want to play all the notes in the same area. So I have to then build it from the perspective of the D. So therefore, to be able to do that as seamlessly as possible, I want to be able to get dexterous, be able to move as quickly as possible from one thing to the other in terms of my perspective of the fretboard. So let's get a quick idea of that before we dive into this. So remember, we're on the Locrian mode, which most people don't play in Locrian, but is still important, because what most people do is they kind of drop the Locrian note out. So in this case, it's the B. You might just say, I'm not going to play a B chord. Why? Because I don't want to deal with a diminished chord, right? But it would be better if I can make some workarounds so that I can include the Locrian chord in one of my progressions and try to say, well, how can I do that and fit it in a way that works? And the three things we looked at last time was that you can play it as a leading chord back home. So if you're playing in the key of C, so if I scroll up to the key of C, so now you have the same notes, right? But then the 7 now is a Locrian modal chord. So when I get to this B and I want to build a chord on it, then I'm going to say, okay, well, I could build a Locrian modal chord. The problem with that is it has this diminished, this flat fifth in it. But that sounds okay if I'm leading home to like the C. So it kind of resolves that way, but it gives you that big tension. Now, of course, the problem is that you have that same Locrian when I'm playing like in the Dorian, all the same notes, but now I want to make the D the root. So what if I'm playing in Dorian and I get to the same B? It's not the 7 anymore. I get to this B. What am I going to do with it now? Because if I play something that's really tensiony, it's going to want to resolve to the C, which maybe you can do that even while you're playing in Dorian, but you're going to run into the danger of doing that you're trying to play in Dorian to make the D the center, and you just resolve to the C, so it's going to start to sound like the C is the center. So that becomes a problem, right? Because what I want to do is resolve something to the D when I go back home, at least. Now, you could have another focal point within the song or whatever, like a C at some point, but that'd be the general idea. So what am I going to do with that B note then? Well, I could maybe just convert it to a minor chord, or I could just drop the 5th, right, and just put a 3rd in it, so I could just add a 3rd but not add the 5th, something like this. Go to D maybe, but or I can just construct it if I'm doing a pattern and I go up to that B. Then we said last time that we can construct a chord that maybe would just be a minor chord, right? Because if it was a minor chord and I went from the A, like here's an A minor shape and then a B minor shape, because those two are constructed the same, although one is not in the key of a D Dorian, it doesn't have a note. One of the notes is not in the key of D Dorian, the flat 5th. It should be back here. But because I played them in order, then it will kind of work, right? And then so I could even go and then to the D minor, or let's play it this way, same shape. You can kind of play with that. And then of course you can always do with the half step, right? So if I'm taking half steps to the B, then that could help me to play it within a minor. So if I was going back to this D minor, like this, playing it like this, and I went from the B back, you could play in like half steps, basically trying to bring it back that way or something like that. But those are kind of your options to kind of break out of the B. Now, but what I'd like to be able to do now is to be thinking, okay, so usually I think of myself in the key of C, and that's going to be our Rosetta Stone that we compare everything to. Now, notice if I'm not trying to memorize the notes in the key of C, you can do that. That'd be cool to do. But what I'm trying to do is memorize the relative positions on the guitars, and the way I can basically build this shape is either I just learn the shape, possibly with the caged system, learning the 3-note chord, adding the 2 notes to get to a 5-note pentatonic, which fits on 4 to 5 frets because I have 4 to 5 fingers. That's how the guitar is structured. That's why we can cut it into 4 to 5 fret structures, basically. And then I can add the 2 other notes, getting a 7-note, which would be the scale, which I can then focus on any note within, which would be making the modes in a particular scale, right? So I can learn it that way. I can learn it by using the formula, which I think is possibly least common in the guitar, more common in piano, because you have multiple strings. The formula would be something like whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. That would be the major formula. But that only works when I count it from the C. If I counted up the formula from like the 2nd note, it would be like I'm counting it from the Dorian, and instead of going whole to there, I would start on the next whole, half, right? Whole, whole, half, whole, right? Or whole, I don't want to, but that's the general idea. I might do another kind of course on that one because I think that's the least used one. And then, but I think it's relevant. And then we can, of course, construct by interval, which again, oftentimes we think about the C as the interval we construct from. On guitar, typically we don't build the whole shape by interval, although you can, and it is useful to do so. What we typically use the intervals for is to learn the shape of the interval and then build chords, particularly triad chords. So we try to build a triad chord by building the intervals. What I'd like to do beyond that is to be able to say, we'll look at each of these shapes. I want to learn basically the shapes on the guitar and be able to name the shapes by their absolute mode, meaning the start of each absolute mode. And the reason I can do that is to say, like, look at this box right here. What is in this box? It's going to be, this is the major right here. It's always the major. The same box is down here. Right, the same box is here, except it got shifted up because this fault line shifted up. So that's actually the same box that's been shifted, right? And then, so then that's the major, that's the Locrian, this is the Lydian, and this is the Phrygian. It's always the same. In other words, I'd like to be able to memorize the starting point of each of these where I'm at, no matter which mode I'm playing in. So how could I do that? Because the reason we can't do that as easily is because we have no place to say, where's my reference point for measuring? Because it's going to change what I call this C. It's either a C, but then if I play in another key, it's going to be a different note, but it'll have the same shape. And I can't say that it's going to be the first. I can only say that if I'm in the C major, because if I was in the Dorian, that C is, although it's the same C and the exact same shape, is now the 7th, right? But it's still the same C, right? So what I could do is I can name it based on the mode. I could say, well, this C, no matter what mode I'm in, no matter what relative position I have related to the C, will always be the start of the Ionian mode, which you can think of as a scale, but you can also think of it as a modal chord. So I don't care if I'm in the C major. When I get to the C, I would be playing a major modal chord of some kind, right? If I was on the Dorian and I get to that C, it would now be the relative position 7, but I would still be playing a C major modal chord. If I was on the Phrygian, here's the C, same exact shape, but now it's relative position 6 in relation to playing in the Phrygian. But I'd still, when I get to the C, I could still see it's exactly the same spot. It's actually in the same square. It's still the Ionian mode. I'd still be building an Ionian chord, right? So that's what what I want to do is be able to look at each of these shapes and basically, and be able to put my mind on what kind of modal chord I'd be playing, no matter what mode I'm kind of playing in. So I can learn kind of like these shapes, which again are going to be movable. They'll be exactly the same if I moved it up to go to a G major and all the related modes. Well, how can I do that? Well, a lot of times people have trouble memorizing the Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, and so on in order, in part because, what are they, Latin or Greek? You know, they don't sound like normal language to me as an English speaker. You know, maybe if I was Italian. If I was Italian, maybe I'd understand. I'm trying to learn Spanish, but my Italian is basically bad Spanish. That then I try to talk bad Spanish with an Italian accent. It probably sounds more like an East Coast. I don't know. So it doesn't sound. So it's hard to memorize. It's hard to memorize those, but you could number them. So what I would do is give them an absolute numbering system. So I'm going to say, and I'm going to base the numbering system on the major scale. Why? Not because the major scale is more important from a modal standpoint than any other, but from Western music standpoint, it is. It's like if I'm trying to measure the universe, physics, whatnot, I happen to be on planet Earth, right? You could say, well, from physics, it's just as easy to measure from the planet Mars and look at it from that perspective. Yeah, but I'm not on planet Mars, okay? I happen to be on planet Earth. So let's look at it from that perspective, unless you want to define something that you're going to tell me about looking at it from the perspective of planet Mars, right? We have to define the terms here. So, right, so we're going to say, generally, I'm going to name them on the major and use those as an absolute numbering system. So if I say the Ionian is absolute modal chord or mode number 1, Dorian is mode number 2, the Phrygian is mode number 3, that lines up to the relative positions of the major scale. But then when I go to like the Dorian scale, if I look at that C, then now I'm going to say, well, where is the C in the Dorian scale? Or where is this note in the Dorian scale? Where's this position at the top right of the box with regards to the Dorian scale? Well, its relative position to the Dorian number 7. It's relative position 7. But from the perspective of the modes, it's what I would call absolute mode number 1, which would be which is the Ionian mode, right? So that's what I want to be able to do. I want to be able to basically look at each of these notes and be able to say, okay, from each of the scales, I can look at the relative position per scale, but I'm also going to give it an absolute position in my mind, naming it the mode, and giving it an absolute numbering system based on the major scale to try to orientate. I said it wrong. Orient myself. I always say orientate. I don't know if that people tell me that's not right. I feel like it should be a word. I'm going to make it a word. We got to orientate ourselves. Okay? We have to orientate ourselves. All right. So in any case, so that means that's going to be basically, I think that'll help us to kind of to keep track of where we are at any particular point. So that means so now we're going to be comparing the Locrian, the major scale, to the Locrian mode, right? So let me put these two in place. If I go from this A to B, for example, what are the multiple different ways I'd like to be able to kind of get in my mind to think about this, these two intervals? If we're going from the C back to so if we go from the C back to the B, I'm kind of going in reverse if I think about it as behind right here. And this is another thing I just want to point out that I've been mulling over. It's kind of a trip that maybe you haven't thought out too clearly like I hadn't, which is that when we look at the intervals, when we look at the formula, we say it's whole, half, whole, half on terms of the wholes and half steps, but we always kind of go forward, right? And when we look at the intervals, we're always kind of looking at the intervals going forward, like one way around the circle. So in other words, if I'm going from C to B, I'm not usually saying, of course, it's a half step going backwards. What I'm going to say is it's going to be going from C to B is always going C up to B, which means it's going to be an 11 note away going forward, right? If I went from this C up or this C up, it would be 11 frets up this way. So that's one thing to kind of consider on the intervals. We don't really say we're going backwards on the intervals. The intervals are kind of defined as going basically one way. So if I'm going from C back to B from the perspective of the C major scale, we're going to say that's going to be an 11 note away major 7. But if I looked at it from the perspective of the B, then we're going from the B to the C. So we could say from the perspective of the major scale, that would be going from the 7th back to the 1st, right? So now we're going from the 7th back to the 1st. And whenever we're going from B to C, we're always measuring it that way. And so it would be a 1 note away, which would be a minor 2nd, right? And then we can think about it from the perspective possibly of the Locrian, right? So if I did that same thing down here on the Locrian, and we're going from now the Locrian B, the Locrian is now the 1st, B to C. So from the perspective of the Locrian, the relative positions, it would be going from the 1 to what am I doing? The 2, which would be a 1 note away major 2nd, right? And then from the perspective of the Locrian, if I went the other way, we would be going from the 2nd back to the 1st. So, which would be, so that from the perspective of the Locrian, it would be a 11 note away major 7. So I'm getting kind of mixed up in my, but there's multiple different ways I can see just going from the 2 notes from the perspective of the different modes. That's the idea. I'm going to try to work into my practice routine a little bit more to try to situate myself on the guitar and be able to be as more dexterous. And it's kind of boggling my mind right now, so I might have messed things up right there. But in any case, I think that's something worth doing, so I might build another exercise based on that. But I'm going to keep that in mind as we go through these. All right, so we're on the Locrian mode. We're going to be building around this interval, around this note. We have the Locrian mode has a 0 note away perfect first, a 1 note away minor 2nd. That's the weird one with regards to both the main major and the main minor. Both of them having a 2 note away 2nd, major 2nd. This one, the 1 note away minor 2nd, is actually equivalent to the Phrygian. And then we have the 3 note away minor 3rd, which is the same you would expect on a minor scale, which the Locrian is closer to than the major. 5 note away perfect 4th, which is what you would expect on both major and minor. And then it has a 6 note away, and it's a diminished 5th. So that's the weird one. It's not anywhere else. And then we have the 8 note away minor 6, which on the major would be a 9 note away major 6. This is what we would expect on a minor mode, which in essence the Locrian is with an added flat 5. And then we have a 10 note away minor 7, which is what we would expect on a minor mode, the major being an 11 note away major 7. All right, let's do a quick joke, and then we'll go into this. This is kind of a long one. It's still a political one here, so sorry about that. It's kind of like a half rant. I just say that I'm just basically saying what I see kind of happening in some areas. I'm not saying it's everywhere. And it just seems funny to me to just kind of say it, right? It's like, it's because it seems odd. Okay, here it is. So let me tell you what I mean. So I'm still confused about this turnabout of the super progressive people regarding the Tesla electric cars, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've been following it a little bit. It's weird to me. Now I admit, I may not be the sharpest tool in the shed or the brightest light bulb in the bunch. So it may just be me. But I could have sworn that only like just a few seconds ago, maybe a couple months ago, owning a Tesla was like a left-wing virtue signal, wasn't it? Particularly to the environmentalists who want to stop the use of fossil fuels, electric cars not using gas, and therefore it was virtuous to buy one, right? To the super progressive, especially environmental, kind of progressive people. But now, due to the clearly slanderously labeled hand movement, they now claim Elon Musk is clearly planning to like resurrect, I don't know, Hitler or something. He's going to resurrect Adolf Hitler himself to like rule the world, which they seem to have come about because of an awkward hand gesture. And so now, not just Elon Musk, but also Tesla car dealerships, as well as, and this is the really strange bit, every owner of a Tesla are now, they're a bunch of fascists who deserve a good thumping by anyone who feels like thumping somebody. Go ahead and thump a that doesn't. Therefore, like the same dude or dudette that bought the Tesla, like 2 months ago, most likely as in part as like a virtue signal to the left, it's all of a sudden they're now like a fascist who random people on the street should totally assault, or at least they should key the car or something like that. I mean, that seems to be the messaging, like in some areas, on the super progressive side of things. Like, but I feel like this is what's like. I feel like if you're a radical progressive, randomly attacking like Tesla owners, Tesla electric car owners, the likelihood of attacking a fellow radical progressive Democrat is fairly high, because it's quite likely that they bought the car over 2 months ago at a time when buying an electric car was a left-wing virtue signal. That's why they bought it. I mean, they may even quite possibly turn out to be a Jewish radical progressive Democrat who bought the car as a virtue signal, considering a lot of Jewish people are progressive Democrats, or at least they used to be. I mean, but the mob is like, no, I don't care. I don't care if the Tesla driver is a 120-year-old Holocaust survivor who was just borrowing the car from her super progressive environmentalist granddaughter who bought the car herself over 5 years ago to prove she's totally down with the cause of being a super crazy progressive environmentalist. They deserve to be taken down for being like a Third Reich revivalist because of Elon's awkward hand gesture at one point. Because like they didn't turn on a dime as soon as the Twitter mob or wherever the mobs are located this time online, wherever the mob was located, they changed directions. And these people didn't turn on a dime fast enough. They should have totally ceremoniously burned their Tesla over like a week ago at this point. Over like a week ago, the message went out on the thumb boards or something. Procrastination like that has consequences, man. It really seems like an odd position to take, even for the radical progressive types. It's just a little too far-fetched. Like, even if you had a really nice, young, healthy Labrador retriever, that one's just a little too far-fetched, even for the healthy. It's, I'm sure it's just me though. I just don't get it, man. It's like, whatever. I may not be the sharpest tool in the shed or the brightest light bulb in the bunch, but I feel like I am the brightest tool in the shed and the sharpest light bulb in the bunch. And I feel like being a relatively sharp light bulb, at least compared to the other light bulbs, should be worth something. As the brightest tool in the shed, I'm easier to find, if less effective at actually doing stuff. Maybe as a relatively bright shovel, I can at least be held to illuminate the sharper tools available in the shed, which is still helpful because like you could lean me up against the useful tools, making them easier, to locate. All right, so we're now on the 6th note away. This is going to be the diminished fifth. This is the defining characteristic of the Locrian mode. The thing that makes it crazy is that it has that 6th note away diminished fifth. Now, there is one other mode that has the same distance of a 6th note away distance, but we call it an augmented fourth because it happens to be the fourth, and that is possibly the least played mode, at least by me. And that one is going to be the Lydian mode, which I'm placed on here. That's why it's hard for me to find it. We're on the Locrian mode. We're on the 5th of the Locrian mode. The Lydian mode has an augmented fourth, which is also the same distance of a 6th note away. All right, so this is the one that the normal shape you think about is that it's got this shape. Right? It gives you that tensiony kind of sound, which is kind of a cool sound. It used to be, again, that's the sound that a lot of people, when you go to like classical, like opera or something like that, whenever something bad happens, that's going to be the cue that you know that that dude ain't good. That dude ain't good. But that's a convention. Remember, like in the blues, you play that all the time, and it doesn't mean that dude ain't good. It's just part of what you're doing, man. Right, it happens all the time, right? It's just that so it's just a normal kind of thing that's going to be in certain areas. So that's going to be the defining characteristic. So this number 5 here is the relative position 5. This number 6 is the 6 half steps away, the number of half steps. It is a fifth, therefore we don't need to redefine it. So it's just going to be a flat or diminished fifth. Okay, so when we look at a chord from a chord construction. All right, so now the thing that's funny also about a flat fifth is that if I look at this string or any of the strings, and I look from fret 1 to 12 and then curve the string into a circle, as though I could still play the notes if it was in a circle, there's only 12 steps. And so if I go 6 way around, whether I go clockwise or counterclockwise, I end up at halfway across. I end up at the same spot. Therefore, there is no real inverse of a 6-note away flat fifth, which is kind of interesting. And that means that when I measure above the note, usually we have to take the inverse distance, because remember when we look at the scales, they only go one kind of way. We have to look at the inverse distance. But I don't need to do that really with the 6, because it's still going to be 6 steps away, whether you're talking inverse or not. And that's also the case with only one other interval, that being the perfect first, of course, because if it was an octave away, you'd be good 12 steps away, and it doesn't matter, once again, if you go clockwise or counterclockwise around a circle with 12 steps, you're going to end up in the same place. All right, so then let's do that here. We're going to be on this B. If I went forward, it would be 6 steps forward, so that's going to be just kind of out of reach. So we're going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Boom, on that F right above here. So if I count it up here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Boom. You get that tensiony sound. All right, now let's go back and go above it this time. So if we go above it, so by the way, what does that mean? I'm going from this note, which is the first of the Locrian, to this note, which is going to be the fifth of the Locrian. Okay, but from a modal standpoint, I'm going from the Locrian to the Lydian. So if I number them in relation to the major scale, I'm going from what I would call absolute mode number 7 to absolute mode number 4. So mode number 7 to mode number 4, or Locrian to the Lydian, is going to be a 6-note away diminished fifth. So Locrian to Lydian is a 6-note away diminished fifth. Okay. All right, I'm just trying to see how I can work that into my mind here. Get that other part of my exercise in. So we're going to go up top here. So it's going to be right there. We're not crossing the fault line, so we're going to say that we're going to count that out. We're looking for a distance of 6. Inverse distance, 12 minus 6 is still 6. So I have 5 right above it because we're not crossing the fault line. And then going this way is getting us to 6. So if I count it from here, we're going to go 5, 6. Boom. So if I went from the perspective of F to B, measuring from the point of the F view, then it would be a flat 5 still, but a flat 5 related to the 7. If I measure it from the perspective of the B, bottom to top, it's still a flat 5 going the other way, but this time from the perspective of the B. Crazy. So that means if I go up 1 step, the 6-note away flat 5 is going to be 1 fret back unless I cross the fault line, which would only happen on the B string. So if I was on this B, por ejemplo, then it would be back here. So notice my perspective is this is my root, that's my root. If I cross the fault line, this tectonic plate shifts to the left, which makes it a larger distance if I'm crossing the fault line. So the rule is, if I go up one string, the 6th note away diminished or flat 5 will be 1 fret back. And then, unless I cross the fault line, which only happens on the B string, in which case if I go up one string and cross the fault line, the 6th note away flat 5 will be 2 frets back, baby. All right, let's go to the next one up. We're going to cross the fault line now. And so now we're looking for a 6th note away diminished 5th, 6th note away diminished 5th, going from the 1st of the Locrian to the 5th of the Locrian, which is equivalent of going from the absolute mode number 7, Locrian mode, which is located at the top left of what I call the house. I call the C's house, the major scale, not major scale's house. So it's in the back of the major scale house. We put the Locrian in the attic. I'm trying to make a story so it sticks in my mind. The Locrian's up in the attic, but because people try to avoid it, the crazy one's up in the attic. And then we go, and we're going to the first of the Lydian, which is absolute mode number 4, which is equivalent to the 4th on the related major scale. So we're basically going from either the 1, from the perspective of the Locrian, the 1 to the 5 from the perspective of the Locrian, or from the perspective of just modes in general, absolute mode number 7, Locrian mode, to absolute mode number 4, which is the Lydian mode, which has a distance of a 6th note away, flat 5. When I go above it, I have to look for the inverse distance, which is still 6, because 12 minus 6 is 6. So I'm going to go, this is going to be 5, negative 5, and then this fault line shifts to the left. So I have to go this way to get to 10, negative 10, and then 9, 8, 7, 6. Let's count it out from the bottom. It's going to go from 5, and then fault line shift this way, 10, and then 9, 8, 7, 6. There's the F. So if I went from the perspective of this F to this B, that would be a 6 note away diminished 6, which you could also call an augmented 4th if you wanted to, if you were in like the Lydian mode. Notice I am in the Lydian mode if I'm thinking of it as this is the Lydian. It's still 6 notes away, but it's actually the 4th of the Lydian. So it would be a 6 note away augmented 4th instead of a 6 note away diminished 5th, but it's the same 6 notes away. And then if I go from the bottom to the top, it would be a 6 note away, properly called this time a diminished 5th, because we're looking at it from the perspective of the D, which is the Locrian mode, which has it as the 5th, even though it's the same distance of 6 notes. And so that means that if I go up 2 strings and cross the fault line, the 6 note away diminished 5th will be 1, 2, 3 frets forward, but I wouldn't cross the fault line if I started on either the D or the G string. So if I was on like this B, por ejemplo, it would go up to here, right? So that would be the general rule. So here's my root. Here's my root. If I cross the fault line, wait a second. If I'm going from this B to that F, and I'm going up 2 strings, yeah, that's right. So here I didn't cross the fault line, and it would be this distance. And then if I started from here and I crossed the fault line, then this tectonic plate shifted to the left, and it made it a lesser distance. So that means that if I go up 2 strings, the 6 note away, flat 5, diminished 5th will be 1, 2, 3, 4 frets forward, unless I cross the fault line, which would happen if I started from the root note on either the bottom B or E string, in which case if I go up 2 strings and cross the fault line, the 6 note away, diminished 5th, the flat 5 will be only 3 frets forward, forward, forward. All right, 3 times I said forward. You see? Because it's 3 frets. That repetition is gonna help to get it in our mind. Okay, so now we're gonna go up 3 strings. So going up 3 strings, and we're going from the 1 of the Locrian to the 5th of the Locrian, which we could also think of as going from absolute mode number 7, the Locrian mode, to absolute mode number 4, which is the Lydian mode. So going from 7 to 4 in relation to the major scale, which is how I numbered the mode. So we're going from the 1 of the Locrian, otherwise known as absolute mode number 7, Locrian, to the 5 of the Locrian, otherwise known as absolute number 4, the Lydian. And the Lydian, of course, lives at the bottom of the major house here. It's part of it's a major mode, lives in the major house scale, but it's not in the penthouse, as C is up top, because C's or the major scale is up there. Okay, so that means, so let's count it out. We're looking for a 6-note away, diminished 5, so we're going to go up 1. It's going to be 5, and then this tectonic plate shifted to the left, so we have to go 10 this way, and then 15. There's only 12 notes in the musical alphabet. 12 minus 15 is -3. I'm going more negative this way, -4, -5, -6. -6 is -6. All right, we're going to say this is going to be 5, and this move this way, 10, 15. 15 minus 12 is -3, -3, 4, 5, 6. There's the F to the B. So if I went from the perspective of the F to the B, I would be going from the perspective of the relative position 5 of the Locrian to relative position 1 of the Locrian, or I would be going from the absolute mode number 4, Lydian, to absolute mode number 1, absolute mode number 7, Locrian, and that is going to be a distance of 6 notes. But from the perspective of the Lydian, it would not be a diminished 5th, but an augmented 4th, although it's the same interval. And if I went from the bottom to the top, then it would be from the perspective of the Locrian going from the 1st to the 5th, which from the perspective of the modes would be going from absolute mode number 7, Locrian, to absolute mode number 4, Lydian, which would have a interval from the perspective of the Locrian of a 6-note away, but that it would be called a diminished 5th, or flat 5, properly said, if I want to be proper about it, because I want, okay. So that means that if I go up 1, 2, 3 frets and cross the fault line, the 6-note away flat 5 will be 1, 2, 3, 4 frets back, 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 baby. But what if I didn't cross the fault line? I wouldn't cross the fault line if I started on this G string. So if I went from like this B up to here, I would not cross the fault line. And so that means that the normal, so that means if this is my root note, then if I cross the fault line, then this tectonic plate shifted to the left and I get a larger distance that I have to travel if I cross the fault line. So that means that in general, if I go up 1, 2, 3, 4 string, I mean like 1, 2, 3 strings, the diminished 5th flat 5 will be 1, 2, 3 frets back unless I cross the fault line, which would happen if I start on the B or the E string, 2 out of 3 strings that I can still have the room to go up 3 strings, in which case if I go up 3 strings and cross the fault line, the 6-note away flat 5 will be 1, 2, 3, will be 3 strings will be 1, 2, 3, 4 frets back, 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 baby. All right, let's go to the next one. I'm going to go up to this one. All right, so now we're going 4 frets up. We're going from the 1, from the relative position 1 of the Locrian mode, absolute mode number 7, Locrian, to relative position 5 of the Locrian mode, absolute modal mode of 4, the Lydian, noting that the Lydian once again lives at the bottom of the box of the C of the major's house here. It's just hanging down there. It still has a view of the ocean. That's the hole at the top of the guitar. Whereas the minor, the Phrygian, is in the back here. It lives in the basement. And then they put the Locrian up in the attic because that's like the crazy person in the attic. They don't talk too much. But this side of the house has the nice view of the majors because they're like the sophisticates of the house, and they have the view of the ocean, which is the hole at the guitar, looking this way. Okay, so that means, see, the story helps to memorize, so I'm going to tell a story. All right, so that means we're going to go up. We're looking for a distance of a 6, so we're going to say this is going to be 5, -5. This tectonic plate shifted to the left, so we have to go 10 out here, 15, 15, minus 12 notes in the musical alphabet means we can bring it down to -3, plus another 5 brings it to 8. Going this way is going to go down, 8, 7, 6. All right, let's count it out from, now by the way, you might make that a lot easier by saying, wait a second, why don't I just say this B is the same as this B up top, and then measure it from there, which then I could just say 6 from here, because I don't have to look at the inverse distance anyways, and it would just be 5 and then 6, right? But, so you might do that as a shortcut as well. Let's count it up this way though, because for practice's sake, it's going to be 5, and then this shifted this way, 10, and then 15. 15 minus 12 is going to be -3, plus another 5 is going to be -8, -8, and then 7, 6. So here to here. So if I went from the perspective of this F, is that an F? Yeah, from this F to the B, that would be going from relative position, from the perspective of the Locrian, it would be going from relative position 5 to 1. Or I can think of it from the perspective of absolute mode number 4, the Lydian mode, going back to absolute mode number 7, the Locrian mode. So Lydian to Locrian has a flat 5 distance, but if I look at it from the perspective of the Lydian, because I'm measuring from the F, which is F Lydian, living at the bottom of the house, then it would be called an augmented fourth, not a flat 5. Okay, but if I went from like the bottom, from the perspective of the B to the F, then from the perspective of Locrian, I would be going from the 1 to the 5, or from the perspective of absolute mode number 7 to absolute mode number to absolute mode number 4. And from the perspective of Locrian, then it would be a flat 5, not an augmented 4. So that means if I go up 4 strings, then I'm always going to cross the fault line, and therefore the 6-note away diminished fifth will always be 1 fret forward. Makes perfect sense. All right, here's the big one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 this direction, and it's 6 that direction, therefore as well, which you can't quite see. Okay, so how would we do this one? We would normally cheat. I'd say, well, that's going to be 6 notes up this way, and therefore it's going to be up top here, and it's going to be 6 notes back this way, therefore it's the same up top. But let's count it out. Let's count it out. We're looking for 6 notes away. Don't have to do the inverse, because 6 minus 12 is 6. So I'm going to say -5. Fault line shifted this way, so I go -10 out here, -15. 15 minus 12 is -3, plus another 5 is -8. This is the only time we have to add another 5 to the 8 to get to -13. 13 minus only 12 notes in the musical alphabet is -1, and then going more negative, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, there it is. I won't count it out on the fretboard because we're running long on time because I'm trying to do this new thing. But let's do one more joke. This one's somewhat political too. I'm sorry about that. That's what I've been watching too much politics. I need to stop. I need help. I know. I understand. That's why I play the guitar. I'm trying to release some stress and watching crazy stuff. All right. So if you want to fast forward it, you could fast forward it. All right. For some reason, when I watch the mainstream of sewage media, I don't feel good. I just don't feel good. At first, I thought it was all just a crock of crap. But on closer inspection, I realized that it was an alligator of crap, you know? And I should have known, because this is America, not Australia. It's not a crock of crap. It's a gator of crap. We don't have crocs. We have gators. That's what's in the sewers. Like when you watch the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, it wasn't, well, actually that was croc, but we don't really have, it should be a gator, because the DC swamp is actually made made of sewage, you know. It's not like a natural swamp. It's actually like the sewage after all, which isn't good because the idea of getting eaten by a crap gator is even more scary than getting eaten by like a normal gator. And getting eaten by a gator is kind of scary, like even if it wasn't made of crap. Man, for some reason, not only I don't feel good, I feel really, really bad. I feel really, really bad. And flabby. Yet somehow, at the same time, plastically smooth. All right, let's go to the next one here. We're on the 6th. The 6th. Okay, so this is going to be an 11 note away. I'm sorry, an 8 note away, minor 6. The minor 6 is what we would expect from a minor mode, which is kind of what the Locrian is, except it also has the crazy flat 5, so it's like the diminished mode. It's the crazy mode, and so we're looking at, from the perspective of the Locrian, the 1 to the 6th, or from the perspective of an absolute modal perspective, mode number 7, which is the same structure as the major scale, the 7th of the major, Locrian, to mode number 5, Mixolydian. So if I go from the modal chord, first of the modal chord 7, or Locrian, to modal chord 5, or Mixolydian, that is going to be a distance of an 8 note away, which we can label as a minor 6. All right, so that's what we're going to do here. This is going to be the bluesy kind of interval, oftentimes. And all right, so I'm on the B. So normally we would go 8 notes up this way, but I want to look at the inverse distance because it's going to be, I can reach it. It's too far away going that way. It's too far fetched. Even for my Labrador retriever, it's too far fetched. We have to go the other way. So it's going to be 12 minus 8, which is going to be 4 notes back. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's the G that we want to see. And so if I go from here, it's going to be from here 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I went from this G to that B, so from the perspective of the G, it would be a 4 note away, which would be a major third. So from that perspective, it would be like I was going from the perspective of Locrian, the 6th to the 1. So the 6th back to the 1, you would think like I'm going in reverse, but really I'm going, we think of it as going from 6, 7 to 1, right? Around the horn, with the interval being a 4 note away major third. If I look at it from the perspective of absolute mode number 5, the Mixolydian mode, to absolute mode number 7, the Locrian mode, then again you get to, it's going to be that that is going to be the 4 note away major third. If I go the other way, I'm going from B to G. So now I'm looking at it from going from the Locrian perspective, mode from the relative position 1 to relative position 6, which is going to give me that 8 note away minor 6. Or from the modal perspective, I'm going from absolute mode number 7, Locrian, to absolute mode number 5, Mixolydian, which has a distance of, once again, the 8 note away minor 6. Okay, hopefully I got that right. That's my new way of thinking. I'm going to try to nail that into my mind. So notice that this G, by the way, if I look up here, because this is the fault line, if I look at the G up here with our story, you can see that the G, although it's Mixolydian, which is a major mode because it has a major third in it, it doesn't live in the house of the major scale. Here's the house where C lives looking towards the ocean up top, and then F lives below it, and then they put the Locrian in the attic, and the crazy Phrygian is in the basement rocking out. But like the Mixolydian moved out because it's kind of bluesy, you know? So it's like, I'm out of here. I'm going to do my own thing. I don't need your house, super preppy C or major people. And so it moved over here, and it's in what I call the pillar, or the just the 2-string, the double stop area. So we have the Dorian up top, and it lives below on the Dorian. And then down here, we have the double stop, the double stop with the the G, or this is the 2-note per string. I call this the 2-note per string, basically hamburger. So we have this shape up here, what I call the box. These 2 strings, what I call the double stop box or house, and then we've got the 2-note per string, which I'm calling the hamburger, and that's because if we did a pentatonic, it would look this way. It would be the hamburger thing, and then we have down here, this is shifted up, so we have this house here and the double stop, but it's been shifted because of the kink in the tuning. This shifted up. Those are the shapes that I can break vertically my shapes down into, which will always remain the same. And again, the Mixolydian is kind of out doing its own thing, hanging with either the D Dorian or it doesn't have to be the D Dorian, the Dorian or the minor in the 2-note per string shapes. Okay, so that makes perfect sense, I think. So we're going to go up here. So we're looking for an 8-note away minor 6, and we're going to go above it. Therefore, I have to look for the inverse distance. 12 minus 8 is going to be 4. So we haven't crossed the fault line, so it's going to be 5 going up 1 string, and then 4 going back here. So I'm going to say this is going to go from here. It's going to be 5, and then 4. So if I go from the perspective of that G to the B, then I'm going from relative position 6 from the perspective of the Locrian, relative position 6 back to relative position 1, or from the perspective of the modes, relative or absolute modal number 5, Mixolydian, back to or to absolute mode number 7, the Locrian. Okay, and so from that perspective, it's going to be a 8-note. It's going to be from that perspective a 4-note away major third. But if I go from the bottom to the top, now I'm going from the Locrian's perspective, the 1st of the Locrian to the 6th of the Locrian, or from a modal perspective, absolute mode number 7, Locrian, to absolute mode number 5, Mixolydian, which has a distance of an 8-note away minor 6. So that means if I go up 1 string, the 8-note away minor 6 will always be 1 fret forward unless I cross the fault line, which would only happen if I start on the B string. If I started on the B string, it would be right there. And so that's going to, so the idea would be normally, so here's my root. And so if I cross the fault line, this tectonic plate shifted to the left, and therefore it moved it back. So normally if I go up 1 string, then the 8-note away minor 6 will be 1 fret forward unless I cross the fault line, which would only happen on the B string, in which case if I go up 1 string, the 8-note away minor 6 will be on the same fret. Let's go up 2 strings, going up 2 strings, to here, where's the G? Let's go here. So now I'm crossing the fault line, so I'm looking for an 8-note away minor 6. So from the perspective of the Locrian, I'm going from the 1 of the Locrian to the 6 of the Locrian. So let's count it out. It's an 8-note away minor 6. 12 minus 8 is a distance of 4. So I'm going to go 5 here and then 10 this way because this tectonic plate shifted to the left. So I'm going to call it negative 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. So let's count it out this way. So I'm going to say negative 5, negative, and then this shifted this way, negative 10. So negative 10, and then 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. So from here to here. So from the perspective of this G to that B, from the perspective of the G, we see that as a 4-note away minor or major third. And that would be from the perspective of going from relative position 6 to relative position 1, which would be kind of going around the horn, 6 around to 1. Or from the perspective of the modes, it would be going from absolute mode number 5, which is the relative position to the relative scale Mixolydian mode, to absolute mode 7, which would be the 7th of the major scale Locrian mode. Okay, and so that has a distance of a 3, however you want to name it, that has a distance of a 4-note away major third. If I go from the perspective of the B up to the G, then that has we're going from relative position 1 to relative position 6 of the Locrian, or from the perspective of absolute modal positions, absolute mode number 7, Locrian, to absolute mode number 5, Mixolydian, which has a distance of an 8 note away, minor 6. Therefore, if I go up 2 strings and cross the fault line, the 8 note away minor 6 will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frets forward. But I wouldn't cross the fault line if I started on either the G or the D string. So if I was on like this B and I went up 2 strings, I would be out here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is as far as you can go. So it would also be 6 frets back the other way. So the general rule would be, and notice where Mixolydian is living now. It's still at the bottom. It's always at the bottom under it's either hanging with the Dorian, so it's on the double stop next to the Dorian, or it's hanging with the minor on the 2 note per string hanging with the minor. So there's where we are located, and so that means that if I look at it from the perspective of the B here, when I cross the fault line, this tectonic plate shifts to the left, making it a shorter distance as I cross the fault line. So the general rule is if I go up 2 strings, then the 8 note away minor 6 will be 6 frets forward, which means it'll also be 6 frets back unless I cross the fault line, which would happen if I start from the root position of either the B or the E string, in which case if I go up 2 strings and cross the fault line, the 8 note away minor 6 will be 5 frets forward. All right, let's go to the next one. And we're going to go up here. So now I'm looking at the G. Where is it located? It's the Mixolydian mode, the start of the Mixolydian mode, mode number 5, and it's on the double stop, what I call when I name the shapes. I name the shapes by the 2 grouping, then the 1 grouping, and then the 2 grouping. So double stop house, what I call the hamburger, the meat of the hamburger, because if I looked at it in a pentatonic shape, this would be the hamburger shape. The meat of the hamburger, or 2 note per string, and then the house double stop. That's how I kind of see it. If you just looked at the shapes, right? And the house double stop is kind of the same as the double stop house, right? It's just shifted up. If you look at it, house double stop house, right? Okay, so that means that if I go up, I'm looking for the Mixolydian. I'm looking for a distance of an 8 note away minor 6. So we have to take the inverse distance. By the way, from the standpoint of a chord construction, we're looking for a minor 6, which would be this 13 from the perspective of a chord construction. Okay, trying to cram all that in there. Okay, so let's try to do this. We're gonna say we're going up an 8 note away minor 6, which could also be called an 8 note away minor 13. Has an inverse distance, because I'm going above it, of 12 minus 8, which is 4. So I'm going to say this is going to be -5. This fault line shifts to the left, so this is going to be -10, and then -15. There's only 12 notes in the musical alphabet. 15 minus 12 is -3, and then +1 is 4. So let's go from here. So -5, and then shifts that way, -10, -15. 15 minus 12 is -3, plus 1 is 4. There's the G. So if I go from the perspective of this G to the A, I can see that as either going from the Locrian's perspective, relative position 6 to relative position 1, which instead of seeing going in reverse backwards, I have to see from a perspective of the intervals going around the top. So that would be a distance of a 4 note away major 3rd, or I can see it going from the Mixolydian, the absolute modal chord of Mixolydian 5, to the absolute modal chord of the 7, the Locrian. Okay, and then if I go from the bottom to the top, from the perspective of the B, now I'm going from the Locrian's perspective, the 1 to the 6, or from an absolute modal perspective, absolute mode number 7, which is equivalent to the relative position of the major scale, the Locrian mode, to absolute mode number 5, the Mixolydian, which has a distance of the 8 note away minor 6, which means that if I go up 3 strings and cross the fault line, the 8 note away minor 6 will be 2 frets back, but I wouldn't cross the fault line if I started on the G string. For example, if I was on this B and I went up 3 strings, I would be there. So the general rule is if I go up 3 strings, the 8 note away minor 6, which could also be called the minor 13, will be 1 fret back unless I cross the fault line, which will be a larger distance because this fault line shifted to the left from the perspective of my tonic. And therefore, if I go up, 2 strings and cross the fault line, which would happen on the B and the E string. If I go up 2 strings and cross the fault line, then the 8 note away minor 6 will be 1, 2, 3 frets back. Wait, I'm going up 3 strings. If I go up 3 strings and cross the fault line, the 8 note away minor 6 will be 2 frets back. Okay, I kind of messed that up because the yellow one looked like the orange one. All right, so let's keep it going here. I ain't going to stop. I can keep it going. We're going to go up 4 strings now and cross the fault line, which we will always do if we go up 4 strings. We're looking for an 8 note away minor 6, which could also be called an 8 note away minor 13. It might more easily be measured from this B at the top, in which case I could say that B is going to be the same B up there. Why don't I just go from there? In which case I wouldn't have to look at an inverse distance. I can look for a distance of 8, which would just be 5, 6, 7, 8. But that's the easy way. And we're going to count it all the way up because practice, the counting, is part of the process. So we're going to say then that we're looking for the inverse distance of 12 minus 8 to be 4. So it's going to be 5 here. This tectonic plate shifted to the left, so it's going to be 10 here, 15, 12 notes in the musical alphabet. 15 minus 12 is -3, plus another 5 is -8, and then going towards 0, -8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Let's count it out from here. -5, this shifts it with -10, 15, 15 minus 12 is -3, plus another 5 is going to be -8, -8, 7, 6, 5, 4. So if I go from the perspective of the G, from the G to the B, what is that perspective? Well, from looking at it in the key of the Locrian, it would be going from the 6th to the 1st, around, if I look at it going around the horn, which would be 4 note away major 3rd. Or from the perspective of absolute modal positions, I'm going from the absolute mode position 5, equivalent to the relative position of the major scale. That's how we label the absolute modal positions, using the major scale as the key, or Mixolydian, to absolute modal chord position of 7, which is the Locrian, which once again has a distance of a 4 note away major 3rd. But if I go from the perspective of the B to the G, remember I'm always going up, counting from B, up to G, even though I'm going to a lower note up here when I'm thinking of the intervals, right? So I'm going from the perspective there then of relative position 1 to relative position 6 of the Locrian, or absolute mode number 7, Locrian to absolute mode number 6, which has a distance of an 8 note away minor 6. Therefore, if I go up 4 strings, I'm always going to cross the fault line because I can't go up 4 strings and not cross the fault line. And therefore, the 8 note away minor 6, which could also be called the 8 note away minor 13, will always be 1, 2, 3 frets forward. All right, let's do the last one up to the top. Again, if I was on the top, I would usually say, well, why don't I just see where it is on the bottom and then match it to the top, because they're the same notes. If I'm looking for an 8 note away minor 6, that would be 8 steps forward. Inverse distance would be 4 steps back. 12 minus 4 brings me back to that G. Same G up top, G. All right, so now let's count it out just for practice. So we're looking for the 8 note away minor 6. So we're going to say then 12 minus 8 is a distance of 4. So we're going to say this is going to be 5. This tectonic plate shifted this way, so it's going to be 10, 15. 15 minus 12 is going to be -3, plus another 5 is -8. This is the only time we have to add another 5 to the 8 to get to the -13. There's only 12 notes in the musical alphabet. 13 minus 12 is -1, and then -2, 3, 4. All right, so that G, so if I go from that G, I won't count it out because we're getting long on time, but here's the G to the B. you can see, and then, I'm sorry, here it is. And then B to the G. You can see that this G, by the way, is hanging out in the shape that is going to be the 2-note per string, what I call meat of the hamburger, right? Shape, as opposed to, so if it lives in the house, and you can always see that box, the house will always be the same. But if they live outside the house, then they move around a little bit, like the G hangs out in this 2-note per string shape, and then with the Aeolian or minor scale, because it's the Dorian, I mean it's the Mixolydian, so it's like the bluesy, so it hangs out with the minor, the cool cats, the minors, and then like it hangs out with like the D in the 2-note per string. So here it is on the hamburger shape here, and then here it is on with the D on the 2-note per string on I call that a double stop when you play them at the same time. Okay, I haven't been doing this, trying to name the shapes for a while, so I'm trying to get that back in the play. All right, let's do one more. So I'm trying to do this last one. Let's see if we can get this in. We're looking for a 10-note away minor 7. So 10-note away minor 7 is what we would expect from a minor scale, which is the Locrian basically is, minor scale plus a flat 5. So let's go, we're going for a 10-note away. If I went this way, it would be 10 notes up. That's too far. So that's far-fetched even for a Labrador Retriever in its prime. So we're gonna go behind it. So we're gonna say 12 minus 10 is 2. So 2 back gives me the A. That's totally doable. So we're gonna go from this B back 2 to the A. If I went from the A to the B, that would be a 2-note away, which would be a major second from the perspective of the Locrian. That would be going from relative position 7 around the horn, right, to relative position 1. If I looked at it from an absolute modal position, it would be going from absolute modal number 6, which would be the relative position to the major scale. That's how I named the absolute modes, which would be the Aeolian, to absolute mode number 7, the Locrian. But if I went from the B to the A, then remember, we always think of it going forward. I'm not going to think of it as a distance of 2 steps back, but the inverse distance of 12 minus 2, or 10. So it's a 10-note away from the perspective of the Locrian. We'd be going from relative position 1 to relative position 7. From the perspective of the modes, it would be absolute modal position number 7, Locrian, to absolute modal position number 6, Aeolian, has a 10-note away minor 7. Whew, let's go above it. We're going to go to this A. Now, where does the A live, by the way? It's not in the house, it's not in the major's house, because it's the main minor. It does its own thing. It's out rocking on its own, and it hangs out in the 2-note per string meat of the hamburger with the Mixolydian mode here, and then it also hangs with the double stop on with the Phrygian. Is that right? With the Phrygian? Let me see. No, it's with the Dorian. With the Dorian. I think that's right. All right. Anyway, let's count it out. So we're going to go above it to that A. So we're looking for a 10-note away minor 7. So we have to look for the inverse distance to go above it. So I'm going to say 12 minus 10 is a distance of 2. So it's going to be -5, 4, 3, 2. So from this B, we're going to say it's going to be -5, 4, 3, 2. So if I went from the perspective of the A to the B, then that would be a 2-note away major second, which would be like going from the 7 of the Locrian back to, or around the horn to the 1 of the Locrian, or absolute mode number 6 Aeolian to absolute mode number 7 Locrian. If I go from the B, however, perspective of the B to the A, that would be a distance of a 10-note away minor 7, which would be like from the perspective of the Locrian going from the 1st to the 7, or from the perspective of the modal perspective, it would be like going from the absolute mode number 7, the Locrian note, to absolute mode number 6, the Aeolian note in our shapes. Okay, so let's go up to the next one. So that means that if I go up one string, then the 10 note away minor 7 will be 1, 2, 3 frets forward unless I cross the fault line, which would happen if I was starting on the B string. So if I was on this A starting on on the B string, if I was on this B and I went up to here, so then I'd cross the fault line. So here's my tonic. If I cross the fault line, this tectonic plate shifted to the left, making it a smaller distance. So the general rule, if I go up one string, the 10 note away minor 7 will be 3 frets forward unless I cross the fault line, which would only happen on the B string, in which case if I go up one string and cross the fault line, the 10 note away minor 7 will be only 2 frets forward. The 7, by the way, is the one that's not part of the triad, but still an odd number that we can easily add to our chord construction. We don't have to name it differently because it's an odd number. All right, let's go to the next one up. So this is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 back. So we're going to say now I'm looking for the 10 note away minor 7. Has an inverse distance of 12 minus 10 because I'm going above it. It's going to be 5, and then this tectonic plate shifted to the left, so I have to go 10 diagonal, 10, 11, 12, 12 octave, and so you can go 12 or 0, and then -1, 2. So let's count it out from here. So it's going to go 5, this shift this way, -10, -10, 11, 12, or 0, 1, 2. So from here to here, so from this A way out here, which is tough to reach. All right. I'm not getting it. This A, yeah, that's right. So that would be a 2 note away, if I got that right, a 2 note away, which would be a major second. Okay, and then from the perspective of this B to this A, that would be a 10 note away minor 7, and we could see once again the A is living over here in what I would call the 2 note per string hamburger shape. It's underneath the house, right? It's underneath the Phrygian of the house and living in the basement. All right. Okay, so then we're going to go up again to here. Well, that means, let me do this. If I go up 2 strings, then the 10 note away minor 7, if I go up 2 strings and cross the fault line, the 10 note away minor 7 will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frets back, but I wouldn't cross the fault line if I started on the G or the D string. So for example, if I started on this B, then it would go up to here. So notice that from the perspective of my root, if I cross the fault line, which shifts to the left, it makes a longer distance. So normally, if I go up 2 strings, the 10 note away minor 7 will be 1, 2, 3, 4 frets back, unless I cross the fault line, in which case if I go up 2 strings and cross the fault line, the 10 note away minor 7 will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frets back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right. Okay. Let's go to the next one. I'm wearing down. I'm not wearing down. I could do this all day long. Okay. So let's go. Unfortunately, it's nighttime. Okay, whatever. You know what I mean? I could do it during the night too. So let's go. We're looking for a 10 note away minor 7. So we're looking for a distance of an inverse distance. 12 minus 10 is 2. So we got 5 going this way, tectonic plate shifted this way, so we're going 10 diagonal, 15 minus 12 is going to be -3, and then 2. Let's count it out this way. So we're going to say 5 shifted this way, 10, 15 minus 12 is -3, 2. So from here to here, so if I went from top to bottom, A to B, that would be a 2 note away major second, which would be like going from the relative position 7 of the Locrian to relative position 1, or like going from a modal perspective, mode number 6, the Aeolian or minor scale note, first position of the minor scale, to the absolute position 7, the Locrian mode, okay, which has a 2 note away. And then if I went the other way, from the perspective of the B, that would be a 10 note away minor 7, which I can see as either going from relative position 1 to relative position 7, or from absolute mode number 7, Locrian, to absolute mode number 6, Aeolian. All right. So and we can see that the A is hanging once again in the 2-note per string hamburger shape with the mixolydian, the bluesy scale. All right, let's go up top to the next one up. Let's go this way. So we're looking for a, I might have not have done the, let's keep going. We got to finish this out. We're looking for a 10 note away minor 7. Distance of 12 minus 10 is 2. So we have 5 right above it. Tectonic plate shifts this way. So 10, 15, 15 minus 12 is going to be negative 3, plus another 5 is going to be a negative 8. And then negative 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. So let's count it out from here. So we're looking for a distance of 2, negative 5. Shifting this way, so 10 this way, 10, 15, 15 minus 12, negative 3, plus another 5 is going to be negative 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. So this A way out here and this B over here. Noting that this A once again is hanging with the mixolydian. So the minor is hanging with the mixolydian. So if I go from top to bottom, whoop, that's a 2-note away major second. Bottom to top is going to be a 10-note away minor 7, which would be like going from the 1st of the Locrian to the 7th of the Locrian, or from the absolute mode number 7 Locrian to absolute mode number 6, the Aeolian, otherwise known as the minor scale. So if I go up 4 strings, then I will always cross the fault line, and therefore the 10-note away minor 7 will always be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frets forward. All right, let's go to the last one here. Now, again, I can cheat normally if I go to that one up top, and I possibly would have cheated if I went to this one, because I could have said, why don't I just go to this B and measure the distance below it, where I wouldn't have to take the inverse distance of 12 minus 10 or 2, but could just go to the distance of a 10 by saying 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. If I'm on the top one, I would say, well, if I'm measuring from here, why don't I just measure it on the bottom string, and then that'll match it on the top string. If I'm looking for a 10-note away minor 7, it would be 10 forward, and therefore the inverse distance would be 12 minus 10 or 2 back, which would be that A, which would be the same as this A up top, right? I mean, why don't you do that? It's so clear and logical. It was easy to explain that, right? You could explain that like in my sleep. I know it like the back of my hand. I can tell my back of my hand even when it's moving like a jackhammer. All right, so let's go up. We're going to say this is, we have to look for the inverse distance, 10-note away or 10-note away minor 7. 12 minus 10 is 2. So we're going to go 5 right here. And then if I shift this one this way, we have to go 10 diagonal, 15. 15 minus 12 is going to be negative 3, plus another 5 is going to be negative 8. And this is the only time we'd have to add another 5 to get to 15, negative 8, no, to 11. And then you could say 11 minus my 11, and then 11. I'm getting stuck here. So if I took, it'd be 12. Let me do it again. 8 plus 5 is 13. 13 minus 12 notes would be 1. And then adding another one would be 2. Okay, I think I got that. So we're going from this A to that B on the bottom. Top to bottom, from the perspective of the A, would be a 2-note away major second. Bottom to top, from the perspective of the B, 10-note away minor 7. Let's stop it there and try to prevent myself from saying something stupid, because I'm getting a little tired. And that's when you say stupid things. And when you say stupid things, people put it on Twitter and then ridicule you for the rest of your life. So I'm better stop it there.